Hey guys, and welcome to today's oil painting tutorial. Today I will paint the second layer of the portrait of Sarah from the Labyrinth, and I already painted the first layer, but some of you were interested in the process of the second layer. And I think it's also a good it's a good idea because this is the first layer. Obviously it doesn't look very finished yet. You have a lot of like these rough brush strokes like here, and yeah, today we are going to make this look better. So I will start with a small brush first, and I think I will just start with the eye and then work myself like up to the next parts of the face. So this is a bit too big, I think. So maybe this brush would work. Okay, so this is a palette. I tried today to use a rather basic palette for you so that it might be a bit easier for you to see the mixing process. If I have like tons of colors, it might be a bit frustrating, so I thought the lesser the better. So I'm just using this ivory black here and burnt sienna. And depending on where you live, you should definitely buy different oil painting brands. For example, I use Schminke and Rembrandt and Sennelier, but if you are in the USA, for example, I think Gambling colors are cheaper there, and you don't have to buy like the extra expensive imports from Europe. So I think in the US I would recommend Gambling colors. I haven't tried them out myself, but I know that many artists are using them. I don't know if Sennelier if this is a color that is cheap in US or if it's also expensive there. I'm not sure. Just compare the prices. I'm using mainly Schminke, Rembrandt, and sometimes Sennelier because my boyfriend uses this color and I just use his colors too. Okay, so I'm mixing here the inside of the eyes. I've added a bit of the permanent red violet because the inside of the eyes is kind of violet red a little bit. So I mix so much color, but I only need a tiny bit. This portrait is very small, so we really only need this the tiniest amount of paint today, at least for the eyes. So I'm using a bit more black here for the top part, like upper part of the white of the eye. There's always a shadow in the white of the eye because it's like a ball, and when you hit a ball with light, there's always a shadow. So the same happens with an eye too. So when you have a reference, pay attention to where the shadows in the eye are and try to render it. Don't just paint the eye, the iris and the white in one color. So for the left eye, I also paint them simultaneously because why should I mix the same color for the left eye again? So this would be like a waste of time and paint. So I will just use the color here as well, very carefully. I also have to pay attention to the proportions, especially with eyes. It's super quick that they look uneven. So I just have to be a bit careful here. So here's like a bit of light in the white of the eye, just a tiny bit. And I'm adding the color, and then I'm slowly working this color into the underlaying color that I just applied to the canvas. because in this layer I want to have the best gradients and the best blendings as possible. So I don't just add color on it, I work every color into its like ground, into the base color. So this layer just takes a lot longer usually, because I pay attention to all the blendings while I paint. So now I have the color of the border of the iris here. I have to paint over the complete layer of the face, because I want every color to blend into the next color. So this means I just have to go over the complete face again. And when I, for example, now I have this turquoise, like this is, by the way, phthalo green cool. So this is a very intense turquoise green tone, which is perfect for the eyes. It really depends what colors your reference has. So you wouldn't always need this kind of green, but for the eyes here, I think it's very useful. So I need to blend the border into the white of the eye. So I'm doing this, I just go over the white of the eye with a brush again, so that I have this border here. And this is just a very small detail, but the face is so small and I really like to have it very fine. The same on the left side here. I just blend in this turquoise, this greenish turquoise tone in the white of the eye. Now to the inside, I use this color here, which is cobalt turquoise from Norma Schminke, and I mix it together with the phthalo green, so that I have these green eyes that Sarah has. So for like this green, I think it's more in the middle layer of the eye, the iris here. Here in the upper part it's dark, so we have the shadow that I talked about earlier. It also occurs. My English is so horrible. So the shadow also is here in the upper part of the eye. And I will add this darker turquoise tone here as well. Okay, now I need this ultramarine blue. This one is ultramarine blue dark from Schminke. I also use ultramarine blue light and from different brands, it's not only Schminke. So you don't need to buy the exact same colors that I use. Just don't feel pressured. I also just use colors that I have here. So for example, if my, I don't know, lemon yellow is empty, I might use cadmium yellow. So it's not a rigid color palette that I have. So what I do now, I need to paint the pupils here. I used a bit of the ultramarine blue dark and this ivory black. However, I just noticed that like the pupil here on the left eye is not really placed right, so I have to correct that. I need to clean my brush here. This is, by the way, Gamsol. This is Liquid Original. This is my oil paint medium, which makes the oil paint dries quicker and also changes the consistency of the paint. So it makes it more fluid and a little bit more transparent. And I use it all the time, of course. But many of you know already, so I just thought for some of you who don't know, I will repeat that. So I have this cobalt turquoise here, and I'm correcting like the iris here now. For such small details, I recommend to hold the breath or not talk, because it's very small and talking will like hinder my painting process. Okay. Also, I oftentimes have very twitching hands. I don't know why, but it happens. So for everyone who might have the same problem, just hold your breath. Or try to breathe very calmly. And also the stick here is perfect. Without the stick, I wouldn't be able to paint like anything of this. Like, you can lay your hand on the stick. It's super helpful. If I would paint this, I would be first, it's super bad for the wrist, and it's just very easy to use the stick is all. So I go over the dark layers here again. So with oil paint, you have the annoying thing that when all the dark tones dry, they completely lose their brightness. So I don't know if you can see the difference with the camera, but the black or the darker tones that I apply on the canvas, they are so much more intense than the blacks that I used on the first layer. And when this layer dries, it will also lose its intensity. So in order to get that back, the only thing that you can do is to varnish the painting. If you use more liquid original, it will stay more like glossy, like almost as glossy as it is like now. For example, this part here, it's a little bit more glossy than, for example, this part here. This is the amount of oil painting medium that I use, like in this case liquid original. And the less liquid original I use, the less glossier the oil paint dry. So this means because I use a different amount of my liquid original on different parts of my painting, everything has a different drying result. So some parts will dry more glossy, some parts will dry more matte, and I personally don't mind it. But if you don't like it yourself, just varnish your painting. With canvas paintings, for example, I really like to leave them as they are, because I don't like varnish that much, but it depends. Sometimes I also varnish my canvas paintings. Okay, now I will move on to the shadow around the eyes. So I use this black here, a bit of the phthalo green and a bit of sienna, and then I just add this shadow tone here, like that. The process with the second layer is the same process that I do with the first layer. The difference is that I pay attention to the blendings, and that I try to make it a final layer, and also that there is an underlaying, like the first layer is the underlaying layer. And it's of course super helpful because I only have to like finalize it and perfectionize it. Is that the word? I don't know. Also, if you have a layer of oil paint beneath your paint, it's better to work on, because it's easier to apply paint on oil painting than on just canvas. Okay, so now I want to make the waterline of the eye here correct, because I don't like how it looks right now. So I will first paint this little reddish line under the waterline. The waterline is this white thing here under the eye. So I'm using burnt sienna, permanent red violet, a little bit more of it, and ultramarine blue, and a bit of white. I need a purple tone. So for the first part here, it's rather purple pink. So I'm just adding this here. Also, I need a bit more of my oil paint medium here to make my paint more fluid or more slick. It's then easier to spread it on the canvas. Then for the last part here, it's more blue, so I will just use ultramarine blue here and more white, because it's a purplish white color here, light color. It might be like a super, absolutely tedious way of working, and yeah, it's really tedious, but the result is definitely worth it. So obviously I don't paint my whole painting with this method. If I would do that, then I would probably need a year for the painting. But I do have some areas of the painting that I paint this way, and this is, for example, like the face, obviously, and the hands too. So I just like that when the hands are very fine, like painted very like meticulously, and the face too. I just really like it. So and the rest of the painting I paint more loosely, first of all because it would take forever, but also because it looks nicer. In my opinion, it looks better when the painting has a mixture of different textures, different brush stroke sizes, and also yeah, different amount of like finesse, so that you have, for example, I plan to leave the dress and the hair very loose, whereas, like I said, the face I want to have very fine, so that you have a nice contrast. I also admire paintings that are rendered completely perfectly, like everything of the painting. This is beautiful as well. Like everything, like every painting technique is perfect. So for my next painting, for example, I would like to make more abstract face. So I'm looking forward to see how that will work. It's always nice to try new things out. So here for the left waterline, I will just carefully add this skin tone here. When I mix colors, it's very automatically. So this is why I have the camera here, so that you can a little bit observe for yourself. If you can't really, if you don't get everything, can do it. When I once have a couple of colors down on my palette, mixing get a lot easier, because I just then can add only like one other color, and then I have the color that I want. So for the right waterline, I need to be a bit more careful here. Okay, like that. Now I need a bit more of the brown here. for this part. Then I will use a bit yellow ochre here for the inside, yellow ochre, and a bit of the cobalt turquoise tone, a bit oil paint medium, more ochre, a bit more turquoise, a bit of this red tone here. Let's see if this is the right color. It's a bit dark though. Okay, needs to be lighter. So if you're painting your own portrait, you can paint a larger one, for example, then this will get, like, the whole process will get more, it will get way more easier. So when it's so small, it's a bit difficult to get all the details, especially with the eyes. So if you don't know what size of portrait you want to paint, I would recommend maybe the twice of the size of the portrait that I'm painting right now, just because it's a bit easier. And also the reference photo is very important, because the fewer details you have, the more you have to make up yourself and have to invent and put on the painting yourself. So when you plan to make maybe a larger face, make sure that you have a good reference photo with a lot of details. If a realistic style is what you're looking for. If you're looking more for an illustrative style, then of course you have to make up a lot of things anyways. Okay, now I have to draw the lash line here a bit down. Okay, now I will use this brush here, and then I will just blend the eye a bit, because like all the paint is a bit, the edges are a bit too strong. So I will just use a small brush, my towel here, my cotton towel, to clean the brush. And then I will just blend it a bit in. I don't like to have these sharp edges in my oil paintings, and the only way to get them out is to smooth out the paint a bit. You can do it while you paint, and you can do it with a clean brush afterwards. So here I'm carefully blending in the white of the eye and the lash line. This looks perfect. Here as well. I need a bit more paint here, so I just use a bit more of the turquoise. And a bit more black. Instead of black, you can also use indigo blue. It's a beautiful color. Okay, so switching back to the dry brush here. Okay. It's a little bit difficult to tell if the eyes are correct. I might add a bit of black here, and I also need better highlights. So I will take the same brush but I need to clean it first. For the highlight, obviously, I take white and a bit of the cobalt turquoise and the oil paint medium. And then I only take like the brush tip full of paint. I carefully add the highlight here. I think that's okay. Here's like a weird white spot. I want to remove that. I just take some of the skin tone here and fill this white spot there in, like that. The waterline also goes like until the border of the eye, so I will have to render that accordingly as well. That's very difficult in this small size though. I recommend painting a bigger face. For this painting, I wanted to make the half of the figure, so I kind of put it all in this format, in this rather small format for such a figure. But I'm confident that the painting will look good in the end. But maybe for beginners, I recommend painting larger faces. So there is like the lash line that goes here a little bit like down, so I'm doing that. And also the waterline here needs to be a bit lighter. So here's already too much Gamsol on the palette. And then when you use too much Gamsol and you paint in such a small size, you can't apply the paint anymore. So make sure you have almost no paint thinner on your brush when you paint, because it will thin and remove the paint on your canvas, and obviously we don't want that. So I'm using a bit more white here, yellow and a bit white. Just adding this waterline here. I'm not sure if it's good enough. Just blending it a bit in. It might be okay. Then we have there like a little, like a lash line under the waterline, so I will add that too. Yeah, I think the eyes are okay for now. I will continue with the skin parts around the eyes now. So I will take this brush, this slightly larger brush here, and I will use some of the red-brown tone that I mix here, add a bit of burnt sienna and a bit of the phthalo green tone. Then I'm applying this color here around her eye, carefully, and on the right side as well. Then I mix the color that comes next. So in the second layer I just remix all the paint and all the colors again. And I just place them next to each other like a huge puzzle. and then I blend them. So I use a dry brush and then I blend borders that might not be as perfect together with a dry brush. So I can also blend by just moving the brush around the border, like this, for example. Here we need a lighter color, so I'm light but not gray. So I'm mixing a new color here because all the other colors are already turning a bit too gray. So I have to mix something new here. Burnt sienna, light ochre and white, and a bit of ultramarine blue and more white. And I'm just now applying the paint here under her eyebrow. Also I need a bit more red, so I'm using permanent red violet. Just adding it here. So, and like that. I'm just trying to make the borders here blending into the skin tone, and I will just add a bit more black to it. So I think I will continue with the nose. So normally I would just work like continue the paint and just broaden the area until I filled everything up. But this takes a long time, so I will probably have 3 hours that I will work on the face now. But this is a bit long for a tutorial, so I will just show you the major parts of the face so that you don't fall asleep and you learn something. So I will start with the nostrils here. I'm using black and magenta and not magenta, permanent red violet and the ultramarine blue, and I'm starting with the nostrils here. Also I have this normal like office chair that you can change, where you can change the height of the chair, and it's so important to have a good painting position, because you will get back pain and neck pain anyways no matter what you do when you paint or when you're sitting in front of the computer. So it's super crucial to have the right just have a very comfy painting position. And then when the pain gets too strong, you need to do stretches. Like I did it yesterday and it was helpful. And sport, like this exercise. So this is super helpful. It will remove any pain. There is like a workout which isn't, it's just a stretching workout, so it's not super like it's not sport, so it's not that you have to be super like fit to do that. I will share this with you. This is really, it's like a back pain releasing stretching workout, and I use it. I have used it and it's very effective, so I'll have to share this with you. Okay, for the shadow area here, there are a lot of greens in it, so I'm using this phthalo green, the yellow ochre and the burnt sienna, so that I have like an olive green tone. Of course you can also use olive green right away, but as I said, I didn't want to have all the paint colors today, so that it is maybe a bit easier for you to understand the mixing process. I will just add this green here wherever I see it on my reference photo. And there's also like this red, brown, orange tone, so I'm just using some of the paint that I have already on my palette. Like that. Okay, the nostrils are now too small. Painting nostrils is super important because it's so easy to turn your wonderful portrait in an ugly mutant when you don't get the nostrils right. And the only thing that you have to do is to just look at your reference and get the color values and the shapes right. Don't paint them too large, don't paint them too small, just almost like the reference, then it will look good. So here, this is a bit too dark, so I will use, like here you have the light that comes through the right part of the nose, so it's a bit more lighter and more orangey. So I will, this was too much Gamsol, so I will use this cadmium, what is it? This one is cadmium red light, and I think this is cadmium red D. Just two cadmium tones. Use a bit more of the yellow ochre here, the red and burnt sienna. And I'm adding this tone here. It might be still a bit too dark, so I will just add more white and yellow. Okay, now the nose tip, of course, is very important, and it's also, I find it's difficult because there's so much different colors going on here. Here's a very small line here along the nose tip, and it's a light line, so I have to add this line here too. Then this orange that I just added there, it's a bit too strong, so I will go over it with a skin tone, like that. Now I'm just mixing the skin tones that I find on the nose tip. So I'm just placing them next to each other, yeah, until all the little puzzle pieces make up the nose in the end. So for the nose tip I have this brownish color here, and oh, this was like not wanted here, so I have to be a bit careful. With such a small size it's easy to place the wrong color. Just make mistakes very easily. So here I have this darker brown tone. I mix it together with this olive green that I just mixed. Just adding here a darker tone. Then for the right part of the nose, I will use the larger brush again. I'm using this skin tone here, just carefully filling the right side of the nose in. I need a bit of the permanent red violet tone here to make it a bit more, yeah, violet and red. Then, like this shadow here needs to be a bit stronger, so I will use the burnt sienna, phthalo green, just here following the shadow, And we need again a lighter tone here for the nose tip. So again, it's very tedious work. It takes a long time, but in my opinion it's worth it. So for the right side of the nose we have not really a shadow, but the skin tone is a bit darker than on the left side and on the tip. On the tip we have a highlight, so I will add a bit of green in the skin tone here. And just fill it in. Now I need the lighter version of the skin tone for this area here. I'm adding a bit more white to it and a bit more of the light ochre. So this looks a bit weird, so I will use this. I will need a dry brush, so this one here, so that I get a blending between all the colors that I just applied. Yeah, now I can add more colors to it. The skin tone here. And now I need an highlight color. So for that I'm using what's that white? I think it's titanium white and a bit of the lemon yellow, just a tiny bit, and a bit of the liquid original, and white again. So now I'm just carefully placing this color here. And here. So the highlight goes around the entire nose. I think the eye, I might need to draw the eye a bit into the nose again, so I might have made the eye a bit too small, so I will have to correct that too. These little things that can happen on the way, but since this is oil paint, we can correct everything. So now, also important to the shape of the nose is the surrounding color. So I will have to add here like a bit darker skin tone on the left of the nose. This was a bit too dark, so it needs to be a bit lighter. Like that. This brush is shit. This is the problem when you have very cheap brushes. They can be shit sometimes. So I will smooth out here the border a bit. This was too much though, so I will go over the border again with a smaller brush here. So here, like the paint there, the color value is wrong. So it needs to be darker. there's like a triangle like on this nose here. I will use a bit of the yellow ochre and a bit of the phthalo green, and I will paint this triangle here. Also, my nose tip is a bit too round, so I will go here from the left a little bit, taking away a bit of the border here. Then I need a bit more of the burnt sienna. This triangle here, it goes like it follows the back of the nose. Like that. And here the shadow needs to be a bit darker. Like that. So I go a little bit back in my chair so that I can see my painting and the reference a bit from a distance. I need another brush. Maybe the same brush but clean. So I'm just a little bit blending in the skin tones here, that it doesn't look so messy. For the tip, I will add a bit more of a lighter skin tone here. And I think this area needs to be lighter. I think I painted it a bit too dark. Like this triangle shape there needs to be a bit lighter, just a tiny bit. And also the back of the nose. Noses are really difficult, and you have to just pay close attention to the details. But then if you do it, and if you're very concentrated and you go back from your canvas and just have a look from the distance, you will be able to see your mistakes, and yeah, you should be able to paint a good nose then. So for the tip, there's like a line that goes from left to right, like this here. Yeah, I think like that. The nose is still a little bit messy, so I want to blend it a bit. Just a tiny bit, not too much. Okay, so the left nostril it's a bit too dark, like the borders are a bit too dark. So I will just use a bit of the cadmium red D and a small brush, and then I will add this red here in this nostril, a little bit in the tip and to the bottom. So it's a little bit less prominent than the border of the left nostril. I can't talk, guys. I'm so sorry. I will add a bit of what is it? Yellow ochre. Okay. So on the nose, the tip of the nose, or just the back, is still a bit, it's still a bit messy, so I would make it really smooth before I add the highlight. So I'm just using this dry brush and cleaning it up after every brush stroke in this paper towel here. And then I'm adding the highlight. So I filled in the major parts of the rest of her face with skin tones, and this is just the same technique that I use for painting the nose, for example, or the eyes. I just placed one spot of paint next to the next spot of paint, and I on the face, like here in this area, for example, the spots are just a little bit larger. So on the nose they were very tiny, and here we have like larger spots. Here's like a peachy tone, here we have like green tones, or here is a violet tone. And now I just continue doing this process and just show you a bit how to blend them all into each other then again. So here I will work on this area on her nose. We need a gradient between this darker shadow on the right side on her nose to the cheeks. So I will just use here this light ochre mix, then I use a bit of the permanent red violet, a bit of cadmium red, and a bit of white. And I'm just filling this in. Also, when I have this paint on my brush, I just look for areas where I can find the same color again. For example, here, maybe here around her nose, then on her forehead. Then here we need a darker tone, so I will use some of the burnt sienna, phthalo green, and light ochre. So this is the shadow underneath her jawline and underneath her skin. her chin. So and there's a darker shadow line below that as well. So I will just add a bit more burnt sienna and phthalo green to the color to make it a bit darker. Okay, here, so area here needs to be a bit darker. I use cadmium red light, burnt sienna, light ochre, and this cobalt blue, and a bit of white, but only a tiny bit. So this way I have like a very smudgy, muddy tone, but most of the skin tones are kind of muddy and they are variations of browns and of grays. So when I mix skin tones, I always mix these. I mix a lot of paint together. I will add here the ultramarine color to make it a bit more bluish and grayish. Yeah, I mix a lot of those colors together because skin tone isn't really that bright most of the time. It's rather muddy. So you can't really do so much wrong. I think the most common mistake that occurs with beginner artists is that the skin tones get too gray and too muddy. If that happens, you just have to mix over again, just start mixing again. When you mix too much colors together, obviously it gets gray and muddy. You just have to find the right balance, like when is it muddy enough so that it looks like your reference photo, and when it's too gray and there is too less saturation in the paint. Just have to develop an eye for that and just compare the paint with your reference, and don't be afraid to paint in your face again, in the painting again. Go over the areas that you have to correct. Like this is just, don't be afraid, doesn't matter if maybe the blending then is destroyed. Like, this is not so important. Important is that the color values are right, and yeah, so that is what I had problems with when I was starting out. So here, this area here is also a bit too gray, so I would just use a bit of red and a bit of orange and just fill it in here. The good thing is when you have very kind of when there's everywhere color on your painting, you can easily paint into it again and it can blend into the rest. So like this. So here we have this ochre tone. So I will just add this green ochre tone here and fill this in. And at the chin we have this orange tone. And if everything like looks too overwhelming for you and too complicated, remember I was at exactly your point when I started out learning to paint. So just believe that you will be able to do it someday. It was super hard for me, and I can vividly remember how I felt when I had to paint my first portrait, how absolutely daunting the task was for me. and it took forever, and I wasn't brave enough to paint. I would just paint at one little spot, and I didn't want to, when one spot was good, I didn't want to go to the next spot because I was afraid to destroy it. So I know how hard it is. Just keep painting, keep painting, keep painting. You will get better. So here at the chin, I am carefully adding layers, just a light layer around the shadow I just placed there. And then we have the highlight here, and I will place the highlight here, just carefully, like that. It's not light enough, so I will use a bit more white. And place it here. Okay, I will leave this place here. It doesn't look perfect yet, but I need to fill out the rest of the face with paint. So I will continue with her forehead. And for that I'm just taking a slightly larger brush, because we need to fill out here a larger area. And I just use white and mix it with some of the skin tones that I already have like pre-mixed on my palette. So I don't need to mix everything new. So I think this looks okay. So the right side of the forehead might need to be a bit darker. And I will add a bit more of the phthalo green and a bit more of the light ochre. Maybe also a bit of burnt sienna. So it's always a mixture of only a couple of paint. I intentionally used this rather limited palette so that you can see you can mix skin tones very easily out of only a few colors. I only need a lot of paint or a lot of different paints when I have very vibrant colors. For example, when I want to paint flowers, or maybe for example her bright green eyes, then I need extra colors like the cobalt turquoise. But most, like skin for example, or hair or clothing, most of the times when it isn't like flashing pink, you can use a very limited palette. You don't have to buy like all the different colors and all the different tones. It's not necessary. So if you are on a budget, you can use a very small palette. So I will now use this yellow here, yellow and white, a bit of this orange, and just add this color here in this part of the gradient. I'm adding more white and a bit more liquid original. And now I'm needing pure white. So now we have a gradient from this dark to this light white color. It's not 100% white. I also think the whitest area is here, so actually like I need to make this area here a bit darker. Maybe like this. And then I can add this light color here. So her forehead has a different shape than I painted it. So there's like a little dent here that I didn't paint, so I will add that. And then of course we need to make the border right, so I will use this brown, a little bit of the phthalo green, a little bit of the yellow ochre, but maybe ultramarine blue here would work better. And I am following this this white dent that I added here, so that we have an okay border, especially at the shapes or the frames of the face. We want to have a smooth border. We don't want to have it like very sharp or something. So I need some of the white color here, just lighter skin tone, and I'm just very carefully going around the new forehead shape here. And yeah, so now we have made a rather smooth edge here. Okay, now we need to blend the rest of the face. So we added all the paint, but we now want to blend it, right? It shouldn't stay like this. I think I will try with this brush. Let's see if this is okay. Okay, I think I will start here. You need a dry, soft brush, completely dry, no remnants of any paint thinner or paint medium in it. It has to be completely dry and as soft as possible. So now we can make beautiful, smooth blendings here. If your paint is too thick, then I recommend waiting maybe half an hour before you use this technique. When it's too thick, you can't really do it. Also, when it's too thin, here for example, it's very thin, then it doesn't work. So I will probably need to add some paint over some areas again. So here on her forehead, the paint, wonderful. Like there's always some construction going on in the background. So here, this area here has the wrong color value, and I will need to correct this soon. Like, even if you have done this blending part, or even if I have done this blending part, I'm not finished yet, so I will have to correct certain areas still, because there maybe the color value is wrong. Like also this one here is too dark, I just realized, so I will change that. I will use a bit of the light ochre and a bit of the magenta here, the permanent red violet, and just adding this maybe a bit lighter. Maybe this was too dark. And here, this needs to be lighter as well. I might use this cobalt turquoise here. And a bit yellow and a bit white. Let's see if the color fits. Yeah, I think this is okay. I think this is good. With this larger brush you can add larger drops of paint, obviously, and it's sometimes it's helpful to have that. So here actually we have like shadow. Directly around her mouth. I also still haven't painted the mouth, so I will paint it later on. I will do it in the same technique as I have painted the nose and the eyes. I just very observe my reference very closely. Yeah, and use a very small brush. So it is no secret behind it. It's just a lot of work to do. So unfortunately, this is how it is. I wish it would be easier. Okay, I think I will continue here with the blending process. You can also use the edge of your flat brush. You don't always have to use the whole brush. Now here, this part needs to be lighter, definitely. Also, like here, this little space, I haven't done anything about this one here yet, so I will just add a bit of the skin tone here. Like this. And I definitely need a white line here. And left of the mouth we have a highlight area. So I will add this white here, like that. Okay, now I continue with the blending process. You can also blend some of the paint into a dry area on canvas. This is absolutely possible. On wood, not. Like the blending process, if you have a wooden surface where you paint on, is different and it doesn't really blend so well. This is why I use canvas. I like to use canvas because blending just is easier on it. Oh, this was too dark, so I need to make it a bit lighter. Okay, the shadow beneath the mouth need to be darker. Now there's almost no shadow left, and this is wrong. So here this area is still not correct. This looks a bit weird, like the color values are jumping left and right. This is how I say it in German, when they are just not really right and they are all different. So I will use this, I think I will use the cadmium red light tone, a bit of the burnt sienna, chrome oxide, not chrome oxide, phthalo green, and yellow ochre. So all of the colors. maybe it needs to be more green. Sometimes it's a bit hard to get the right tone. Maybe this tone here. Let's try. So I want to have this area a bit more evenly than it is. So now this wasn't that great. I need more brown. I see those like mistakes when I just squint my eyes and I look on my painting on the reference, and then I see, oh, this area looks super weird. The color values are wrong. So most of the time when you are close to your painting, you don't really see it. Okay, maybe like this, maybe. Now this area here needs to be lighter though. So making this area a bit lighter. I think the whole area there needs to be lighter. Lighter, and it has this peachy tone. So you see how long this takes. I hope you could get something out of it. So I will continue with the same technique and just look from the distance, check my reference and see how my painting looks. And yeah, I think I will also do the mouth. You will see it in time lapse. Yeah, I might just correct this one area here because it really bothers me. This was not right. Sometimes the brush is just shit. Maybe I should invest in an expensive brush sometimes. This would probably be a good idea. Normally the Tosh brushes are good, but sometimes they're just shit. Okay, yeah, I will try working on this area there until I have the color values right. And I will show it to you in time-lapse. I hope this video tutorial was helpful for you, so you could see some of my mixing process. And yeah, if you have any questions, just let me know. And I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.